Hello and welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series and films. I am Andrew, joined as always by Ryan.
I'm Ryan, as always.
He is Ryan, and Steven.
I am always Steven.
He's maybe Steven.
Maybe. We have always Ryan and maybe Steven.
And this week we are on SI Unscripted. We are talking about binge releasing media and weekly releasing media.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a general, I'll say, debate. Maybe I don't even not really a
discussion.
Debate. Discussion
Yeah.
is probably a better.
There's some discourse on it.
There is
about the best way to approach it and the positives and negatives involved, I guess.
Yeah. So obviously, in the streaming era, it is now possible for streaming services like Netflix or Amazon Prime, whatever,
Disney Plus,
yeah, to release their new media very quickly in just a binge format where every episode of the whole season is released all at once, and you can just go watch it at your leisure, and there you go, you're done.
And this release technique was like pioneered by Netflix. It was like one of the things that set them apart when they really started to have like bigger, more prestige shows. Was like you can watch the entirety of the season today.
Right now, and they wanted to buck the trend of broadcast style weekly releases.
Well, what's interesting is they they made their mark, right, not with their original content initially. They made it by going out and buying up properties that they could show. So suddenly, instead of you having to wait for the reruns of, I don't know, Friends wasn't one of the first ones, but of these types of shows where it's like, well, you can either wait for a rerun to catch it, or you could just go click season, episode, and watch it and be like, that's great, I'm going to watch the next one.
Right.
So Netflix learned really quickly, hey, there are a large portion of people out there who, if they have the opportunity to watch 5 episodes tonight, they're going to do it. And we got a couple of, we got some percentage of monsters at 3 a.m. They're on their 15th episode of the day, right? Right. So if we just get it out there, tear it up.
Yeah, because it's very much the embodiment of on-demand media.
Right.
Compared to appointment media.
Appointment television.
Yeah. So like we're talking like Game of Thrones, 24, Breaking Bad, where it happens every Sunday at 8 o'clock.
It's like you have the watch parties, you have the water cooler talk, the Monday after or whatever.
TV or whatever.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, did you catch that episode of Grey's Anatomy last night? Which no one ever says that, but you never.
Some people say that. Okay,
for like 18 seasons.
Let's not say nobody.
No, I mean there's a reason why it's still going.
Yeah,
it's a popular show.
It's just insane.
It's fine.
Is it? I don't know. It's wild.
Days of Our Lives is still going.
I actually watched Grey's Anatomy in season 1 because my roommate was like,
"How old are you?"
Very.
Apparently very old. I mean,
I was in college. I was like,
I watched a couple episodes of Grey's Anatomy, and like if you like the kind of not procedural, it is kind of procedural.
It's definitely procedural.
It's procedural melodrama. Like it's good.
I think with us, my roommate and I, we watched it through like, I want to say halfway through season 1. And once we started to realize what kind of show it was like, okay, this ain't really for us. And then we bounced out. But like we were part of it, of like talking to people, because a lot of people were talking about it at the time. And then it's been, when I found out it was still going on, I was like, why? What?
Well, characters die, they come back, whatever.
Yeah,
it's just a soap opera.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to what your thoughts are for basically binge and weekly style releases for TV shows. And the question is really, do you think that either one is better than the other? And if you do have like problems with a certain type of release style, then I just kind of am curious like what your thoughts are of like why you think it doesn't work.
Okay,
so go ahead, Steve.
Jump in. So personal opinion, right? Binge release is
everything here is a personal opinion, so yes.
I am now going to give you your own opinion.
Here comes the facts.
All right, well, time to pick up the phone. Let's go. So 10% now. So binge release style, I think, is phenomenal for older stuff that's being released, right? I don't need Disney Plus to dole out Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers one episode at a time.
Oh, that would be miserable.
Like the old DuckTales is coming back.
Once a week, idiots.
Yeah.
You're like, no! go.
And if you want to watch more, you can watch it tomorrow night. It's just the rerun of last night's episode. I don't need that, right?
Yeah.
If I want to sit down and blow through all of, I don't know, like Tiny Toon Adventures, or one of my childhood Animaniacs, one of my childhood things, I'm going to sit down and blow through 4 episodes, or I'm going to be like, oh, this episode, and then, oh, what about the episode with the hippos, or like this, and go bounce around, right? But I think when you are releasing a show in the vein of the Game of Thrones, like
we're talking prestige TV, like AAA titles.
Sure. Yeah.
If you want to be, Bezos, take notes, right? If you want to release the next Game of Thrones, dropping it all at once isn't going to do it.
I don't think so, yeah.
Because if you want to have this kind of twisty plays with people where there are all these different things happen and none of your characters are safe and next week's is a big twist or a reveal, etc.
Yeah.
If you drop all that at once, people are going to talk about it a lot when it happens. It's going to be big. And then it's just going to trail away to nothing. And unless you have something else to immediately drop after it, a different show, a new Grey's Anatomy, I don't know, whatever. Something else to put after it.
Grey's Anatomy 2, even grayer.
Even grayer. More anatomy. this week we go over
the darker,
all
grittier
the
Grey's
bones.
Anatomy, the black anatomy.
They open the curtain. Did you know that existed? Oh, what anatomy is this?
Oh gosh, it opens up.
So gray.
Opens up, and one of the doctors is like, "Were you aware that over half of your bones are in your hands and feet? Do you know how easy it would be for me to harm you right now?"
And then that person passes out, and they're like, "He's in a coma. My God, you startled him so hard." Title card hits. Grey's Anatomy, even grayer.
Are we making a new TV show?
This is much like our Chat GPT bonus episode. We should riff on this.
Get
Anyways,
off the rails. But yeah, so if you want that to have kind of the staying power, I think you need the weekly
because
releases.
you want to try and draw it out because you want to build the hype and the water cooler talk that Ryan kind of mentioned.
You want to create word of mouth, right? Where people have time to free here. We all hate them. The stupid spoiler articles that come out because Disney Plus for some reason released their newest episode at 3 a.m.
They release like 10 minutes after the episode's like, if you watched it the second it dropped, it's
still
like,
you could
they're writing the article as the episode.
They are. So like cowards.
There is some trickiness there where you can't play like, oh, we're going to release this every week at a time that's inaccessible to most of our viewer base. So they all get spoiled because their phone pops up a recommended article about, can you believe that, Snoke isn't real or whatever.
At least they learned that with Ahsoka recently for Disney Plus, because it used to all release at like 1 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays. Normal people can't do that.
Oh, the number of times I got up the morning after and was like getting ready for work, and I just pick up my phone. I'm like, what? And like the thumbnail's a spoiler, the article headline's a spoiler, and I'm like
bait left and right.
Yeah, and so I had to go through my Google feed and Facebook and say, I'm not interested in Star Wars, even though I'm very much interested in the show.
I know I'm your target audience.
Just so it would quit feeding me these like clickbait spoiler articles.
Google's like, the algorithm can't seem to get past this point. It doesn't understand. It wants to go here, but it's not allowed.
It's not allowed.
So, kind of talking about like having to build a hype base.
Right. Well, you want to build word of mouth too, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't just want to be like, okay, well, we released our first episode. The people who are interested in it are going to watch it. Well, you want them talking about it, and then other people overhear the talk. They see the articles, whatever. Well, maybe I need to get in on this, right? Like, if you want to have an upward trajectory.
So, a great example of this for the binge method of watching was Squid Game.
Oh, Squid Game was everywhere.
So Squid Game released in like early September or something like that, and then a couple people watched it, and it was trending up a little bit. And then out of nowhere, I think just like one like big article hit, or someone on Reddit blew up or whatever.
Yeah,
and then no one could stop talking about it.
Right.
For effectively like 3 months.
Yeah.
It just
kept spreading.
And it just kept going and going and going.
Yeah.
And I really feel whenever you have because I watched Squid Game, it was great.
Yeah.
You have these really high quality shows like that, or Stranger Things or whatever, that they're so good that I don't think it matters the way that they were released.
Right.
Just because they are so they're culturally relevant because of their quality.
Well, this is almost the outlier.
Not because of the shock value.
Right,
the 10 out of 10 outlier that you remove along with the 1 out of 10s, right? When you use statistics, because it's like, well, it doesn't matter. If you release this every week, it would have been crazy. If you release it all at once, still crazy.
It's still crazy.
It's just really, really good.
Because the content. So my extremely uninteresting take is it depends on the show. To me,
perfect.
honestly.
Yeah, let's just be incredibly.
Yeah, but my personal opinion,
take a stand, Ryan. Gosh.
if it was just up to me in terms of how I want to consume media, I would binge everything. I would not want to wait week to week.
Which is interesting because the trend to want to binge is more prevalent among younger audiences.
I'm just so youthful, Steve.
But you're old.
Look at my eyes.
Well,
all the gray hair that falls out every time I cough.
Expect to have that kind of.
But what I was gonna say is like, so my preference of like how I like to consume media is I want to watch it at my pace when I want to watch it. Right. Like if it's in the morning, if it's not, I want to watch 3 episodes tonight or just 1 episode tonight. I want to watch 1, 2 from now. That I always traditionally have waited, and I'll wait till a season of something is done before even starting it when it's releasing week to week a lot of times. Like, but I think the strategy of releasing all at once is not great for a lot of stuff because of the very nature of the water cooler talk and like the hype around, and you get a weekly article buzz written about it. You get a weekly reaction from people. I think especially any kind of show that has like cliffhangers and stuff like that, like it is beneficial to me, to the show and to the marketing side of it, to release it week to week. But for me, like my own personal viewing habits, I want it all right there when I want to watch it. I don't like the idea of waiting a week.
So that's like the poster boy ad for Netflix, right?
Yeah.
It's like watch your show how you want to watch it. And that's totally accurate.
It's valid. I mean, it's totally fine because like everyone has different schedules and how they want to consume media and stuff like that. And you can continue. I was just
You're good. I was just going to say, I think though, from a marketing perspective too, when you get into the week by week, it helps a marketing team because they can see what do people latch onto. What is it about the show? When you have a binge shot in the arm, right, and it drops, your marketing's already set at that point, and we're going to promote this, how we're going to promote this, and that's just how it's going to be. Same issue with like films, right?
Yeah.
And then you have films that didn't do well in the box office. They become cult classics because people start talking about them.
Or because they were marketed incorrectly.
Right.
Right.
And then the marketing changes, right? You go back to, what is it? Is it, it's not Troll, it's Leprechaun Films, right?
Oh, yeah.
Nowadays, if you go to buy one of those, the cover's going to have Jennifer Aniston on it.
Right.
Why? Because when she was in the film for 3 seconds, back in 1980, whatever, she was not a household name.
Yeah.
Nowadays, everyone knows.
Now she's a household name.
So of course she's on the cover, right?
Yeah.
So they got to find. They've now discovered a way to market it deceptively, but they market it and they
retroactively.
Put it on there.
Just change it. Well, like so for me, and I'm trying to think of a specific example of this, but like I know. For me, and now not so much like with the podcast, obviously, if we're watching something to review it and it's coming out week to week, like Ahsoka, you know, we're doing episode reactions. We're like watching it. Book of Boba Fett. That's a different story. But like my own personal life, I have had moments where like I'll watch a show and then wait a week for episode 2 to come out. And then in between episode 2 and 3, I get bored and start another show and then never come back to that show.
That sounds like a skill issue.
Like it is. Well, it's. I'm like, I want to watch more, but it's not here. So, what's this? And I'll start watching something else. And when that usually happens, it's when I start watching a very long show. Like I'll start a rewatch of Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
And I'm in the thick of that.
Now you're in it.
Now I'm like, it's going to be 4 or 5 weeks before I come back.
Every dinner time is Breaking Bad.
So, and that is totally valid, and I completely get it. Yeah. So I come from, very heavy anime watching pretty much all my life.
Yeah.
And before that, I never really watched weekly TV shows that came out. Like I didn't watch 24 until it was all available, all 9 seasons were done, kind of thing. But because I watch anime weekly, which, we keep up with the new seasons every quarter, and there's, anywhere between 3 to 10 shows of a season that we're watching.
Yeah.
So then we have basically 10 new episodes of something to watch every week. Yeah. It's not all from the same show, obviously, because they're all released weekly. But then you just have these 20-minute episodes that you can just kind of, watch. Yeah. And then whenever, if we come and watch or come and review stuff for the podcast, I'm the one that's already caught up because I'm just watching it every week. It's 20 minutes out of my week, which is fine. And then you have someone like Steven looking at you who will complain that he now has to, binge an entire, 24-episode show because he hasn't kept up with that 20 minutes per week.
It's a skill issue.
It is a skill issue.
Oh, see, the thing is, I'm pretty sure the only shows that I complained about having to binge were
the ones that you didn't like.
Let me think about it. Wheel of Time.
No, Wheel of Time and Rings of Power. Power
Bebop,
at the
Rings of
same
Power.
time. No, it was House of Dragon and Rings of Power.
House of
Dragon,
Dragon,
Rings of Power
at the same time was rough.
Cowboy Bebop and Wheel of Time.
Rough.
But so like with that, like I think that the
like,
weekly.
I binged Arcane.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No complaints, no notes.
That was the one I was going to bring up about like my wife. Like she latched onto Arcane. She saw me watching like a piece of, I think it was like episode 2 and was like,
Why
What is
is this child crying so well?
what is this animation style? This is really cool looking. And I was like, yeah, it's because I was like, what are the chances I'm going to be able to talk my wife into watching a League of Legends show? She don't even know what League of Legends is, you know? Yeah. And so I was like, yeah, it's based on this and that. And she's like, huh. And then I went to work. Now, I had watched, I want to say, because how did they release again?
So when they first released, it was released first 3 episodes, middle 3 episodes, last 3 episodes.
I think when I jumped in, it had been the first 2 drops that happened, but the last 3 hadn't. So I watched like up to like 6 or whatever. And then when the last 3 came out, I had watched like the first one of that. She watched all of them and all the way to the end before I got home because she was off work on like a Monday. So she spent like Sunday night catching up while I was watching something else. Then I went to work Monday, came back, and she's like, I finished the series. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
So the thing that always worries me about the binge method of release is the fact that when a whole new show is out, the only thing that matters now is the final episode. And you don't get those minute changes of the plot and story in between.
Like a mid-season cliffhanger type
yeah,
thing?
because you can't talk about anyone with it. Because now the only thing that you can talk about is the finale.
So I agree and disagree with that. Like, I agree in the sense of like in the office water cooler conversation
because like now it turns into, oh, have you finished it yet?
Right, it does, because my so I have a coworker.
You haven't finished it, you can't talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have a coworker who, I mean, he'll put down 6-7 episodes of an hour-long show in a night. Like, it's obscene. God. It's like, how?
He's
show me the math.
Space and time in the hyperbolic time chamber.
Show me the math of how you did this and slept and you're here before me at work.
He's like driving home, watching it on his phone on the highway.
He's one of those people on 65 or 280.
He's popping yellow jackets he got from a truck driver. He's like, let's get through this.
Shows up with a monster.
But where I disagree is it has made like watching stuff with my wife like better, because now we can both watch 2 episodes a night if we want to, or we can watch 3, or we can watch 1, and as long as we're discussing it together, then we're on the same page. So I think it is situational in that, like, the binge release method, in terms of, like having the group conversation of like your friends on social and like, people at work and like the water cooler, it's a nightmare, because it is, have you finished it yet? Have you made it to episode 4 yet? Yeah. You know, and you're like, no, I'm on 3. Leave me alone. Don't talk to me.
And I think it really hurts the kind of experience of collectively watching a show. So, like, just as an example, we did Ahsoka for, basically quick react. So every single week it came out, we did 15 minutes worth of content. You spread that out times 7, and then you have another 45-minute episode of us recapping the whole episode.
Yeah.
Or recapping the whole season and the final episode all together. Whereas if it all came out at once, the only thing we would do would be a 45-minute episode.
It would be the single thing.
So for us, we love it. Let's turn it.
Well, no, I mean, like, as content creators, it definitely adds a lot more potential that we can get out of the show.
Going to the Ahsoka,
for sure.
right? You have so much time with each weekly drop for people to speculate on the internet and be wrong.
I mean, you have hours worth of discourse.
Form of entertainment.
Yeah.
But like, I still remember, right, going all the way back to Game of Thrones as it came out every Sunday night. And I didn't watch the show. I watched like 2 episodes.
I didn't watch it either, but I kept up with the story.
Yeah.
I was one of those people who, when TV shows came out, it was like, hey, you don't have like a DVR or a TiVo. You have to be in your seat at 9 p.m. this night to watch it. I'm just not going to watch it. Right?
So my trajectory with Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad is the same, in that, like, I did not jump on until like season 4 of either one.
Well, when it started really getting good. Yeah.
Well, because I got the DVDs of Game of Thrones from a friend or whatever, and it was like the first 3 seasons or whatever, and I just binged it, and I still think that box set they let me borrow was incredibly helpful, because it came with a fold out
map
of all the relationships and the people.
It helps a big dip.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a whole lost.
That's
art.
a whole nother thing.
Like that's I miss.
But I miss when video games came with instruction manuals,
so good.
And you had like little tips and tricks.
But like watching that show and having a map of Westeros on one side of that thing and being able to flip it and see the family trees was huge, and keeping everyone straight. And then same thing with Breaking Bad though. With like when I started watching
had
it,
a map of.
Yeah, it just
Arizona.
came
They had a map of all the
there.
math. No, it was they released it on Netflix, and it was the first 3 seasons, and I watched all 3 seasons in like a week and a half. It was like obscene.
The first 2 are pretty good. Season 3 though,
it
man, it
rips.
kicks.
Yeah, and so by then I was like, I cannot wait for season 4. Which season 4 dropped like I think the week after I'd started. So like it was perfect timing on Netflix's part. They were like, all right, by our math, it'll take people about this long to get through it, or AMC, whoever licensed it, But it was like I binged the first chunk of both of those, but then I became part of a group of people who were having the water cooler conversation. The convenience for me on both of them, though, was like by then Game of Thrones had come to HBO Max, or it was streamed. You didn't have to have HBO Go. Yeah, back then you didn't have to have
changing
cable.
your names, people. Oh
Now
my
it's
God.
just Max.
Pick a
Stick
lane.
with your
Okay,
brand.
Max.
But yeah, like for me, it was when it was just on TV, AMC and HBO. For Game of Thrones and. That I was not watching it at all. I was like, I'm out. I'm just going to stream. I'm not going to get a cable subscription just to be a part of this. And then as soon as it became accessible both ways, it was like, all right. Now, and for Breaking Bad, I just went to friends' houses and watched it every week.
I remember because we started working together right when season 5 was popping off for the final half of season 5.
Yeah.
And it was definitely one of those experiences because I really didn't even start watching the show until the end of season 5, the first half. Yeah. And then I just watched all of it because I was not really interested in it up until that. And then I think I watched Dead Freight with Holly, and I was like, oh, this is really good.
Yeah.
And so then we fast forward or whatever, and then we had being able to take part of those water cooler talks at the end of every single week, and then we had a big massive Breaking Bad
party
themed
at the end.
watch party.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of experiences I think that really help fan bases and stuff latch on to those shows.
Right.
Because I still love Breaking Bad because it's a fantastic show, but it really shows because you don't have these kind of fan bases with like Squid Game, and Squid Game's a good show.
Well, and now I will say in Squid Game's defense, right? Part of the problem too is it's only one season.
Yeah.
There hasn't been 2 years later. There wasn't a new season dropped, and everyone popped off about it
and Stranger
again,
Things is a great example of that where it has grown in popularity every single season. Where
It just keeps snowballing and picking up more people who go back and watch the old stuff.
So I did like a little bit of kind of research on search terms through Google. So Google Trends is just a thing you can kind of go and type in a search term and then look at like essentially the popularity of the search term. And it's really fun because you can obviously set a whole time period of how long this goes. So I did all my searches from basically 2010 until now, so 13 years. And you get to see obviously like the big spikes whenever new seasons come out of like Game of Thrones and that kind of stuff. And you can definitely tell where a lot of the popularity is because you can have multiple searches to compare all against each other. So like I had like Star Wars, Game of Thrones, Stranger Things, Marvel, or Avengers, Infinity War, whatever. Yeah, and you can definitely tell like Star Wars beats out basically all of them just when The Force Awakens comes out because that was like the first really big piece of Star Wars media that we had in forever. And then you have like Last Jedi and all the other movies that came out, and they are lower in popularity than like Game of Thrones season 5, 6, and 7, and 8 or whatever. I can't even remember how many seasons there were. 8?
8, yeah.
8, yeah.
6 if you're a connoisseur.
Yeah, but so my point was, so like Stranger Things, it has really big spikes, but the spike for season 4 is like exponentially larger than all the other 3 combined. Right. Just because it has slowly built up this, not even really slowly, I guess, but it has built up this audience that now it's kind of just its own snowball rolling down a hill.
Yeah. It's like an unstoppable force. Not that the marketing team has nothing to do. They absolutely have to keep
they still
marketing. But you have so many people that are just like proselytizing. You have to watch it. That like it just spreads like a virus. Speaking of, The Last of Us TV show is one of the few TV shows like that HBO's had where like each episode was
growing in viewership.
Yeah,
Yes.
like that's another similar-ish metric to look at that's like always interesting because a lot of shows have like that first big pop on the premiere and then it kind of like goes down.
And then it'll pop up like so that and that's
finale.
kind of the thing. Yeah. So there's only like 3 other like TV series that have really done that where they grow in viewership at the end of basically every new episode or season or whatever.
Yeah.
And Seinfeld is definitely one of those where in I think it was like season 6 and season 7 it started at like I'll say 14 million just as an example. That's not correct.
Right.
And then it moved like every episode it just kept going and going and going until the finale of each season where it was high. But most of the time the trend is first episode everyone watches because they want to see it and then no one watches it until the final episode. Just because there are people that are madmen and only watch the first episode and the last episode. I don't know.
Right. Who are these psychos?
well, what happens is they watch the first episode. Yeah, it was cool. I'll get to it when I can. And the finale finally comes out. Oh, crap. I need to go back there. They pound it all down, right?
Yeah, it could be that way. But yeah, like, and it's much harder for a lot of these companies to, I guess, like follow track these trends across other different streaming services because the numbers aren't Nielsen numbers from ratings on TV anymore,
right.
which is just publicly available to everyone that's in the industry.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's just all private information, and you just like, I think that the show does well.
Yeah,
So,
Netflix is very selective with what they tell people.
Well, and they rely so much on their own internal metrics that it's almost kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so Netflix is a weird case, right? Because for them, they produce and release so much content in the course of a year.
Yeah.
Where I saw a statistic where they were counting like, hey, this is the first season of a show and not something where it's supposed to be a limited. They tried to remove limited releases, like it's just a one season thing or whatever. And in a year, Netflix might credit that they've put 300 season ones.
Oh yeah.
On the board, and then also you go a third of that. You say like 90 or so season 2s, and then a half's down to season 3, and a half's again to season 4. So what they're doing is they're basically throwing everything at the wall.
Yeah.
Finding what grabbed people, and it pops off. Well, we're gonna make a season 2 of that. This didn't do anything. We're gonna leave it be. It could become a cult classic. They don't care, right?
Yeah.
They're done with it.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter.
And even for some of the stuff they like for Netflix, it makes sense because if they had a weekly release for everything coming out, they'd cannibalize the crap out of their other shows.
Yes, sure.
Because you would constantly be like, well, what am I going to watch on Monday? The 3 episodes they're putting out for these different shows? Or do I have to wait for Tuesday to watch these? I only have so much time,
Yeah.
Whereas
It would be a confusing.
it would also,
mess.
the schedule would be a mess.
Yeah.
So for them, it makes sense because it fits their business
Yeah,
model.
because they're coming out with so many shows where like you have HBO or Disney Plus or whatever that really only releases one episode a week.
And they're only releasing
Right.
a couple. Like they don't have, Disney Plus isn't out here like we've got a Marvel show, a Star Wars show, and an animated show, and they're all coming out right now together. Like it just doesn't happen.
They
that
tend
way.
to spread their stuff
Yeah,
out.
and it does
out.
feel like they really never release them concurrently. It's always like completely different demographics.
they're
and
very
movie
careful
theaters
to
do
not
this too.
cannibalize, yeah.
Because we obviously saw that this past summer with Barbie and Oppenheimer, to where obviously they try and find polar opposite. Audiences.
The two came together.
The two came together. That's
Dead
totally
Reckoning.
different, but like the concept has always been done.
Well, they came together
Yeah.
to crowd Dead Reckoning out.
Poor Dead Reckoning.
To ruin Tom Cruise's dreams. And hopes.
He's still
doing
living
fine.
on
He's doing
a
fine.
mountain of money.
He's on a
it's
couch
okay.
jumping up and down. Xenu, strike them down!
Oh boy.
So like, yeah, I think too the other factor to think about with like, streaming services like Netflix with releasing so many series at the same time. Like Neil Gaiman, when Sandman, the adaptation on Netflix came out, was like, hey, if you like this, just put it on in the background and let it run, because the way Netflix decides if they're going to cancel something is how many people binge the heck out of it in like its first month or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't matter if it's like, I really like this and I'm going to get back to it next month. It's like, no. We need those numbers now because these, bean counters at Netflix look at like how
It's the only
crazy
way we're gonna get
bingeable
anything
was
more
it.
out of it.
Well,
Yeah.
and like so that's with Cowboy Bebop live action. It was definitely one of those where I think it's like it's definitely retention rate for episodes that are watched, and also initial viewership numbers that go on top of that.
Crash.
To where basically like there was a ton of initial viewers that watched Cowboy Bebop live action, but they didn't have episodic retention past like episode 4.
Right. That's about where I dropped out.
Yeah. So and because of that. Now, Netflix just looks at this and they're like, okay, well, people were not interested in this after the first 3 or 4 episodes. They didn't finish the show. We don't care anymore. Cancel. Get it out of here.
Yeah, and they know they don't need to be like, hey, start it up. They don't need to wait a month to find out.
They already know those metrics because I think they canceled it within the month.
Yeah, like the first
It was like by the end of that
days,
month. Yeah.
If you put out something really good for them, they know it because it's just people are blowing through it, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's the converse of like by the end of the month they will announce that they've greenlit season 2 because they want to continue while it's still top of mind.
That hype, yeah.
While you're still thinking about, you just finished it, you're still talking to your friends about it. It's like, hey, season 2's been greenlit. It's coming out next year. Get ready.
So that there's no like there's a cliffhanger and it's going to get resolved. It's okay to watch it. You're not going to be left always wondering why.
Right in the lurch, like a lot of their shows.
So it was actually really interesting like going through the Google Trends stuff. And I tried to find some level of correlation between binge method dropping off faster than serialized releases or weekly releases. And there's honestly no difference.
Really?
Basically, each show has roughly about a 5-month period that like the search terms that I was looking for are pretty relative.
So they were bubbling up around the same pace,
obviously they have the big spike and then they trickle down, but pretty much like all of those trends start at, month 1, end at about month 4 or 5.
Okay.
So what's interesting here is some of the stuff that I was looking for, right? So Real Good, who claims to be the most extensive streaming tracker in the U.S. and UK.
Sometimes they're
Take
wrong.
that, everyone else.
That's what they claim.
Sometimes they're wrong.
So basically they looked at how many consecutive weeks they spent in the top 20 of the most watched and this was the first half of, I think, 2022.
Okay. Who's they? The shows that released?
Yeah, Real Good. It's looking at all the shows that came out.
Got it. Okay.
So the most successful shows that they polled were all weekly releases. And it's a little horrifying to read this list because it's like Yellowstone. Okay, yeah.
That makes sense. That's critically acclaimed.
Yeah, Severance. Okay, yeah. All right.
Heard good things.
Euphoria. I don't.
No, I've heard really good things. Holly watched it. She loved it.
And then Book of Boba Fett. Disappointing. So
people like watching a train wreck,
Yeah, like the most successful binge release was Amazon Prime's Reacher, which was in the top 20 most watched for 8 consecutive weeks.
Okay.
And this is for which time frame? Like last year?
This is
just 2022.
First half of 22.
Okay, got it.
So it's in the top 20 for 8 weeks, right? Pretty good, right? Yellowstone, by comparison, was in the top 20 for 18 straight weeks.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like whenever I was looking at these numbers, I'm not looking at like the popularity of each one because they're totally different shows, different demographics. You can't really like. It's kind of apples and oranges. Like Star Wars is always going to be Star Wars. It's always going to be popular.
So Book of Boba Fett was in the top 20 for 8 weeks. Do you recall how many episodes Book
8.
of Boba Fett?
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
Well, it was actually interesting because I compared all of the Star Wars shows to each other for trends. And Mandalorian season 1 and 2 popping off. Like they were very, very high on the thing. Everyone loves Baby Yoda.
They love that Grogu.
Yeah.
And then I looked at Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, Andor, and then Ahsoka. Ahsoka was, when we're recording this, it was still airing.
Yeah.
By the time you listen to this, it'll already be done. But basically, the amount, so like the first 2 seasons of Mando were like 4 times as high as any of the other shows.
There was a lot of buzz around Mando.
Which, I mean, Mando has been, like Disney has said, it's the most watched show on
and I don't
their platform.
I don't think the first season of Mando would have been as successful if it was a binge release. Because you get to that first episode where, we see Baby Yoda or Grogu for the first time, and then you have to wait a week. And just
everyone's
the
talking
loses
about it.
their
Everyone's
mind.
talking about it.
Right.
Where if you had that to where you had to watch the whole season before you could even talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we go back into the issue of if you watch the whole season, at that point, the only thing that matters is the finale.
The final
so
episode.
That big reveal, twist, craziness at the start gets lost.
It does. Because the minutia of each episode, even if it's still cliffhangers, they don't matter because all you can do is next one. Next one.
Yeah,
Skip
but
the
like
intro.
I think they do matter in that like
Skip the
it
recap.
keeps
That's
you.
a whole other problem.
But like, so that's what happened to me with Breaking Bad, though. Was like I popped in those discs, or well, no, sorry, that was Netflix on that one. But I started it, and like each episode of Breaking Bad was masterfully done to where it ends just enough on a cliff. You get enough closure for the episode, but enough of a cliffhanger to go, I've got to see the next one. And I stayed up so many nights where like I can't not watch the next episode, and I would start it going, I'll just watch the first 8 minutes to see what happens.
But that's the thing.
Then,
like, imagine if you were watching that weekly and the amount of hype that you have going into that next episode.
Yeah.
And it's definitely one of those where I think the show has to be formatted for the binge format for it to make sense.
100%
for that.
And now, speaking of formatting, we also have shows, right? Like you already mentioned with Arcane, where it was released in a 3-episode block and then a 3-episode block.
Because they're each individual story arcs.
Right? And then a 3-episode block. I think, was Andor released?
Andor, the first three was, and then it was weekly.
Right.
Where it probably honestly could have been 3, 3, 3, and 3.
Right. And we saw that
because they were
with,
separated kind of like that.
Wheel of Time season 2, where they did 3 and then went to a weekly.
Yeah, to a weekly.
So it's kind of almost they're playing the game of getting having like their cake and eating it too, where they get to have kind of that binge effect of, well, let's see how well received it is, get people interested and hooked, and then we go to this like draw it out play of, well, let's reel out the interest for as long as we can.
I definitely think it worked really well in Andor's favor. Unfortunately, not a lot of people watched Andor in general,
which is just
it's
a tragedy.
Travesty.
It's an incredible show.
Well, and now I will say, in not the viewer's defense per se, but if you are going to do this kind of release, that first set of 3 or whatever
has to
episodes,
be a banger.
It needs to be a banger. And I don't think Andor became a banger until the 4th episode.
Yeah.
Which was kind of a mistake on their, like, again, if you know this is your format, you need to write for this. You need to get those hooks in early.
Yeah, and that's kind of where, like, I think the show needs to be formatted to that specific release
to
style.
what they know the release is going to be.
Because, I mean, you know, for broadcast TV, they know every week.
Right.
That, you know, like, all right, you know, we need to have a cliffhanger here. Like, 24 is perfect for that. And the show is still good when you binge it, but it is watching it weekly just had to be absurd.
Because you had the week to discuss it. Mm-hmm. I think, too, like, and we brought this up in our Kaleidoscope episode. If anybody out there watched that and wants to listen to that, dude.
Did anyone watch it?
I don't know. Did you check the metrics on that one?
The show was fine, honestly.
It wasn't bad.
Good, yeah.
But like Kaleidoscope is the idea, the premise, if anyone doesn't know, is like basically the Netflix was going to play it for you in like a randomized order, which turned out to be like, I think 9 different possible configurations or something.
Yeah.
But like that was the first show that had come along that I was excited about it because like they're playing with the format of streaming. Like you don't have to release, because the first whole appeal of streaming was like, you don't have to go by this. You have to be there at 8 p.m. on Sunday night or you miss it. And then if you don't have a TiVo, you're just, you know, SOL unless somebody has like a rerun.
DVDs come out.
Yeah, like those days ended and I was like, thank God. And so then like after that though, you have the binge release that Netflix started doing. But then it's like no one has played with the idea of like what can we do different with these episodes and how we release them that we have like an unlimited options for like, you know, being able to stream it. Like Black Mirror did a couple of movies that were like
make your own story,
choose your own adventure style
choose your own
thing.
Adventure, there we go.
And
it was interesting. That was a fun way to do it.
Yeah.
That Kaleidoscope had not been a binge format. And it had been like people trying to figure out, put pieces together. Like, well, I saw.
Oh, that'd be really cool.
Like a week to week, but everybody gets a different one.
What info can we put together to figure out the story? Like, it'd be your own puzzle, right?
That would actually be really cool.
I feel like
people would be spoofing that with like multiple dummy accounts, though.
Oh, yeah. There's always someone out there ready to ruin it.
Yeah,
but I
using
do
VPNs to like. Just
there's always a game system.
Gaming the streaming format, right?
Yeah,
like we've seen it now with a lot of shows where it's not. An episode's not 30 minutes. It's not 45. It's not an hour. It's the amount of time it takes, right? Yeah. This week is 45. Next week's an hour 5. So the week after that's 37.
Disney Plus does a fantastic job at this. Netflix does not.
HBO did a good job of this with Last of Us.
Yeah.
Where the first couple episodes were longer to really get enough stuff out, info to you, and then they could tighten it up as they went.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, this, again, along with kind of the semi-binge format of releasing several episodes, I think when shows are being created now, they need to get in, they need to work this out ahead of time and figure out how do we drop this in the most appealing format, to grab people, so then what we dole out as we go holds the maximum number of people and builds the word of mouth you want for that run, right? Like that needs to be something that a lot of Disney Plus, Amazon, et cetera, they need to put emphasis on this type of structuring and paying attention to how it works.
Yeah, because with the like, everyone always looks at like Stranger Things as like one of the biggest success stories of like a new binge media that's like AAA tier production.
Right.
And the issue is that honestly, the first season still felt like it was formatted to like a weekly broadcast format.
Yeah.
Because I think that, the Duffer Brothers, they were still very much of like, this is something new, and like they're still writing it with that mentality in mind.
Yeah.
And then you move on to like season 4, and it's much more of a cinematic style.
Where they're willing to put out like, this is an episode. It's like, that's a movie.
Yeah. Well, and the big thing is that I know a lot of Netflix shows. One Piece live action was definitely one of these that suffered a little bit with some of its story, where they were beholden to an hour-long episode where they really only needed
could have been
probably
45
minutes, whatever, and cut out a little bit of the fat.
Yeah.
Whereas some other shows, like, and this is why I like Disney Plus release method for like their Star Wars shows, is that if an episode needs an hour, it gets an hour. If it only needs 30 minutes, that's all it is.
So I feel like Netflix did good with that with like House of Cards, though. They had episodes that were like 35 minutes and some that were like an hour. And it never felt like this
Like
needed to be longer and this could be shorter.
Yeah.
So again, I think a lot of the arguments just come down less to the service and more to the creators and who's able to do it.
Running it,
Because another one on Netflix that did a bad job to me was Arrested Development. So I'm a huge fan of the first 3 seasons of Arrested that aired on Fox back in the day, right? And they canceled it famously. Like
that's what Fox does.
Fox canceled Family Guy, Arrested Development, and something else, Firefly, all in the same season. And I'm like, you dingbats. Anyways, when they brought Arrested back on Netflix, because again, what happened is they licensed it, it exploded on Netflix, and they were like, oh, hold on. Get Hurwitz on the phone and get these guys back
in here.
Yeah. But when they came back, the episodes were like some of them were kind of longer, some of them were like shorter, and the rhythm and the pacing of the jokes and the editing wasn't there because they also weren't working towards commercial breaks. Where the old show always had like a scene ender, like a moment that like they're about to kick to commercial, and then when the commercial would come back, it'd be a tiny little recap of like what's happened in case you just came in, but the recaps would always be funny. So it wasn't just like a functional thing that like worked for broadcast TV. They leaned into that and said, let's make even our recaps, part of the humor, so that even if you've just watched it, you want to see the recap again because it's a new spin. When they rebooted it on Netflix or brought it back with season 4 or whatever, they didn't do that, and they didn't have the bump outs, the bump ins.
So it didn't have the same feel. Which it's funny to watch something like, say, Firefly on DVD or streaming or whatever, because they have the same cuts where a commercial was here. It's not, and obviously they don't do the same kind of recap or whatever.
Right.
It's like, what do you?
Does it fade to black and fade up?
It goes back. To, and it's usually there'll be something will happen and there'll be a reaction, right?
Yeah.
Where like Mal's looking at something and you only see his expression. You don't see what he's looking at. He's just, and then it goes black, right?
And then when it comes back, it's his reaction, and then you see what he was looking at.
I don't know if it does kind of actually start that way.
Sometimes.
So this has always been a little bit of an issue for me when I watch anime, because whenever you have original video animations, which are basically like straight to DVD, longer episodes,
not made for TV.
Yeah, so they're like either 25 to 45 minutes long, or you have like just anime films or whatever,
or almost like a miniseries. It's like here's 8 episodes, 45 minutes long or whatever. Yeah.
And they're not meant for TV, so the pacing gets really messed up halfway down the line because you're just like, this is a really long episode.
Yeah.
And it really kind of like messes with like how you're used to like that style of pacing.
Yeah. No, it's the same idea of like I'm used to this specific rhythm with these episodes, and now I'm not getting. And what they did with season 5 was they went back to
that they learned.
Kind of that. Still didn't matter. Season 5 was trash, but it was like the at least they learned from the idea of like we need to make this tight, because it was almost like writing for 24 minutes of television with commercial breaks makes you have to cut the fat, and then when they would have like a 45-minute episode, like scenes would just hang on. You're like, why is this in here? Like, it's like you need some shows I think need that
format,
that tight format.
24 is a fantastic example of that because you get these little mini commercial break cliffhangers when then you have like the big hit of the timer of the day that's going with the bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
And if you don't have commercials in there and you don't have this kind of format that's meant for broadcast TV, you run into these pacing issues where you're just like, wow, this is going on for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I need a breather.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't give you that break that you almost
the
like
little tension cut or whatever.
We're a little in the weeds, but you know.
Yeah. Well, now I will say to a final point, to your point about they license Arrested Development, right? So Netflix really learned some of these lessons too, in that when they were licensing shows, you only get it for so long. So the long tail's irrelevant. Make it boom while you can, baby.
Yeah.
Dump it all, get it all out there, squeeze as much as you can for people subscribing, and hope that when this show moves on, they found something else they want to watch.
Right.
And while they're watching that, you're putting something else out, and they're going to watch that, then you put something else out.
It's that content churn.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is certainly the lesson they've learned.
Yeah.
For better or for worse.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So we're wrapping up here, and so just final question: I know, Ryan, you said you prefer the binge method. That's okay. You're wrong.
If I'm watching something by myself, I think it's hugely dependent upon, like, I love the community aspect like we had with Breaking Bad, and I have with my other friends with like Game of Thrones. So like if it's a show where I have multiple people and multiple friend groups into it, I love the week to week. But if it's just me, it's frustrating not to be able to move at my own pace.
No,
but that's just me. Yeah.
Steven?
So I love being freed from the shackles of you must be in your seat at 9 p.m. on a Sunday every week.
Well, I mean, luckily streaming has fixed a lot of that.
I like that aspect of, like, if I want to watch One Punch Man tonight, by God, I'm going to sit down and watch 6 episodes of the first season and not be beholden to, well, can I catch it on Tuesday reruns, right? I love that we broke that. We got away from that.
Yeah.
But the weekly is I think the way to go for me, because you get to build, you get to speculate, you could be wrong with your friends about something stupid that you had this weird idea that it could happen. We're doing that right now with Ahsoka, obviously, and also kind of lampooning some of the stuff we've seen on the internet along the way. But I think for the longevity of a show, it needs to be doled out there, and it needs to be
stretched out a little bit.
Well, and it needs to be designed to be stretched, right?
Yes.
So if it's not designed to be stretched,
like reality TV, where I mean, like, just release it, no one cares.
But that implies that it was designed at all.
Right. But I'm pretty much the same way. I think weekly is definitely my preferred method, mostly because we watch so many individual shows per week. I don't want to be beholden or to just be like, oh, cool, we can watch 6 episodes of the same show tonight. Thanks.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, it just doesn't really do it for me. Yeah. Mostly because I do like the weekly speculation that you get out of, like, oh man, did you see what do you think's going to happen? That fight was so cool.
Yeah. And how can they possibly top that for episode 5?
Exactly. And then whenever you reach to if it's binge, and then, like, everyone's talking about the final episode, you're like, man, the finale was great. And you're like, well, yeah, what do you thought about that fight in episode 4?
Oh,
and
I'm
like,
just looking forward to season 2,
Yeah, and it's just like, you don't get that kind of like camaraderie outside of just a weekly release. But, here nor there, I think definitely agree that it's important, or it depends on the show and depends on the writing.
100%, yeah.
Because like each show has its own different types of goals to get people involved.
Yeah.
Well, the main thing for me is I want to see them get more creative with this. Like Kaleidoscope was an attempt that wasn't pushed
dip
far
the toes
enough.
in the water.
Yeah.
But I want to see, whether we're releasing episodes in 3 episode blocks because they're each, these arcs.
Yeah.
Or, the drop a couple at the start, dole it out afterwards. I don't know. I want to see them get wild with it. Or like Stranger Things season 4, where it's like, here's a 30-minute episode. Here's an hour and a half.
Yep.
Here's 2 hours. Here's an hour. Or whatever. However it went with that. Yeah. So.
Well, and you don't want them to get so experimental that it's inaccessible or inconvenient or confusing for viewers, and they're like, what am I watching? No, you have to hit up twice and then close your eyes. It'll wait till you close your eyes. So close your eyes. You still haven't closed your eyes.
Up, down,
now
down,
it's
left,
playing
right,
it.
left, right,
now you can't see it, but if you open your eyes, it won't play it. It's very hard, Like, you want it to be accessible, but I want to see them mess around with, like, the ideas of what can we do streaming.
All right, so before we go, we have to talk about our Patreon because that is what we do. We have, for just $1 a month, you get access to all of our bonus content, commentaries. You can vote on our Patreon picks where you get to vote on an episode that we're going to review. You get early access to it before it hits the main feed. Yep. And it's honestly a great time. We have a lot of fun. They're all off format. And yeah.
It's wild. Gets wacky, gets zany.
We also have commentaries on there, so you can like sync up our episode with a movie while you're watching it. It's like Mystery Science Theater 3000. We do at least one bonus episode a month.
Guaranteed.
All this for $1. The low price of $1. But if that's too rich for you, that's too much. We understand. Take it to your streaming platform or your podcast platform of choice.
Streaming platform.
Yeah. If you want to binge all of our episodes on Spotify, that'd be great. But also leave us a review. If you want to listen to our episodes weekly on...
That's also great, but also leave us a review.
Apple Music, that's fine too. Apple Podcasts, whatever we're on. I don't even know.
Whatever Apple wants to call it these days.
Go to apple.com and search Spoilers Intended. I'm sure we're on there somewhere. Probably not.
We would greatly
leave us reviews.
Appreciate it. But
before you let them go,
got
to remind them, the website is spoilersintendedpodcast.com.
Oh, yeah, we do have a website, don't we?
You can find links to Patreon, previous episodes, Discord, our socials. I want to see people on Discord or on socials. If you see us posting, I want to hear from you. I want to know, do you prefer binge watching? Do you prefer streaming? What shows did you absolutely sit down and binge and it was 3 a.m. and you had to work the next day and you're like, I got to know. I got to push the button again. I want to hear it, all right?
All right, so that does sound like all the time we have this week. So until next time, I'm Andrew.
You're Andrew. I'm Ryan.
He's Andrew.
That's Steven. And every binge weekly format was intended.
I don't know.
Wrap it.